They found Victor Reyes at dawn, frozen solid in the Idaho snow. His fingers were still wrapped around a .45 caliber pistol. His face was twisted into a mask of rage and desperation. Ice crystals clung to his beard like diamonds. His eyes, still open, stared at nothing. 6 feet beneath him, in a concrete bunker hidden under the barn floor, James Brennan sat on a military cot. An M1911 pistol lay on the blanket beside him. His hands were steady. His eyes were hollow. Deputy Higgins descended the ladder, flashlight cutting through the darkness. He had seen combat in Desert Storm. He had seen death in 100 forms. But the scene in that bunker made his skin crawl. "Brennan," the deputy said, his voice echoing off concrete walls. "How long were you down here?" James looked up slowly. His face was gaunt. His lips were cracked. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel scraping over stone. "Long enough to watch him die. Long enough to know which side Winter chose." And the deputy wrote something in his notebook. "We need to go back to the beginning, son. How did this start?" James closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he was somewhere else, somewhere hot, somewhere that smelled of dust and blood and burning diesel. "It started," he said quietly, "in Juarez, 4 months ago, when I decided to save 12 kids instead of following orders. 4 months earlier, August 2018, Juarez, Mexico. The compound sat on the edge of the city like a fortress. High walls, razor wire, guard towers with spotlights that swept the desert in lazy arcs. Inside, Victor Reyes ran his empire with an iron fist and absolute ruthlessness. James Brennan watched through night vision binoculars from a rooftop 300 yards away. At 35, he carried himself like the Marine he used to be. Compact, economical in movement, every gesture purposeful. The shrapnel scar on his left shoulder was hidden under body armor and tactical gear. His call sign was Ghost. He had earned it in Afghanistan, where he could slip through Taliban lines like smoke through fingers. 2 tours in Helmand province, 1 in Fallujah. He had left the Corps in 2016 after an IED turned his Humvee into a fireball. The shrapnel should have killed him. Instead, it just left him with nightmares and a medical discharge. Now he worked private contracts for the DEA. The pay was better. The rules were looser. The nightmares were the same. "Ghost, you have eyes on target," the voice crackled in his earpiece. Marcus Webb, DEA team leader, former Army Ranger turned federal agent, a man who followed orders and expected everyone else to do the same. "Affirmative," James whispered. 2 guards on the north wall, 1 roving patrol. Windows are barred but accessible. "Remember, this is intel gathering only. Plant the cameras. Get out clean, no engagement." James adjusted his grip on the suppressed Glock 19 at his hip. "Copy that." But intelligence was wrong. It was always wrong. The DEA had said Victor Reyes was planning a major fentanyl shipment across the Arizona border. Plant surveillance, track the drugs, build a case. What the intelligence had not said, what no one had known, was what James discovered when he slipped through a basement window at 2 in the morning. The room was cold, concrete floors, metal cages, and inside those cages, 12 American teenagers, boys and girls, the oldest maybe 17. The youngest couldn't have been more than 13. Their eyes were hollow, their wrists were bruised from zip ties. James froze in the doorway. His finger moved to the radio transmit button. "Webb, we have civilians. Repeat, American civilians. Kids. This isn't a drug operation, it's trafficking." Static. Then Webb's voice tight with tension. "Negative, Ghost. Mission parameters have not changed. Intel gathering only. Exfil in 30 minutes. James looked at the kids. 1 girl was crying silently. A boy in the corner had given up entirely, staring at the wall with dead eyes. "I'm not leaving them," James said. "That is a direct order, Brennan. Do not engage. Do not compromise the mission." James pulled the radio earpiece out and dropped it on the floor. The mic picked up his last words before he stepped on it. "Find another Ghost." He moved fast, picked the locks on the cages, herded the kids toward the basement window. One of them, a girl with braids, grabbed his arm. "Are you really here?" she whispered. "Or am I dreaming again?" "I'm real," James said, "and we're leaving, now." But compound security was not sleeping. The moment the first kid climbed through the window, alarms screamed. Floodlights blazed to life. Men shouted in Spanish. Boots pounded on stairs. James positioned himself at the basement door. The kids scrambled out the window behind him. He counted them. 8, 9, 10. The door burst open. 3 sicarios with AK-47s. James dropped the first 2 before they could raise their weapons. The third got off a burst that punched holes in the concrete wall beside James's head. James put 2 rounds center mass. The man went down. 11 kids out. 12, all clear. James turned to follow. That was when Diego Reyes came around the corner. 24 years old. Victor's nephew, his brother's only son. Diego was supposed to be the future of the cartel. Smart, ruthless, being groomed to take over when Victor retired. Diego had a pistol. James had a split second to decide. The kid's finger was on the trigger. His eyes were wide with adrenaline and cocaine. James fired. The round caught Diego in the right leg just above the knee. The impact spun him like a top. He went down screaming. Blood spread across the concrete in a dark pool. James ran. Behind him, the compound exploded into chaos. Gunfire, shouting. The extraction team finally arrived late and useless. They covered the kids' retreat. Black SUVs roared away into the desert night. Diego Reyes survived, but his leg did not. Infection. Gangrene. Mexican doctors amputated below the hip. A 24-year-old cartel prince became a 24-year-old cripple in a wheelchair. And Victor Reyes, who loved his nephew more than he loved power or money or his own life, made a vow. A blood oath whispered in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and shattered dreams. I will find the man they call Ghost. I will take everything from him. His peace, his hope, his future, just as he took Diego's. The DEA debriefing lasted 4 hours. James sat across from Marcus Webb in a windowless room in El Paso. Webb's face was carved from granite. You disobeyed a direct order, Webb said. I saved 12 kids. You created an international incident. Victor Reyes has connections in the Mexican government. The cartels are screaming about American military operations on their soil. Those kids were American citizens, kidnapped from bus stops and shopping malls and high school parking lots. Webb leaned forward, and we would have saved them through proper channels, legal channels. You jumped the gun. They would have been dead by the time your channels opened. Webb slid a folder across the table. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately. James opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Termination of employment, misconduct, failure to follow operational protocols. Victor Reyes wants your head, Webb said quietly. We can't protect you if you're not on the payroll. I never asked for protection. You're going to need it. Intercepted communications show the cartel has put a bounty on you. $500,000, dead or alive. James stood. Then I'll make myself hard to find. He walked out of that office and never looked back. By the end of August, he had liquidated his savings, $85,000 from 6 years of contract work. Blood money, some would call it. Survival money, he called it. September in Portland was gray and wet. James rented a studio apartment under a false name, paid cash, bought a used Ford F250 from a private seller. No paperwork, no trail. He spent his days researching properties in remote areas. Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, places where a man could disappear. The paranoia set in slowly like water seeping through a cracked dam. Every Hispanic man in a restaurant became a potential sicario. Every truck that followed him for more than 2 blocks was cartel surveillance. He slept with his Glock under the pillow and a fighting knife taped to the bed frame. The nightmares were worse. In his dreams, Diego Reyes screamed as the bullet tore through his leg. But in the dreams, Diego was younger, 13 years old. One of the kids James had saved. The lines between victim and perpetrator blurred until James woke up gasping, unsure which side of the moral equation he stood on. October 28th, a Tuesday. James came home from the gym to find a package outside his door. Brown paper wrapping, no return address, no postage marks. He carried it inside, set it on the kitchen counter, studied it from every angle. Could be a bomb, could be anthrax, could be a dozen things designed to kill. He opened it carefully. Inside was a dog collar, worn leather, metal tags. The name engraved on the base said Max. But Max was not the name that made James's blood run cold. The hospital bracelet was underneath, white plastic with black text. Diego Reyes, Hospital General, Juarez, Trauma Ward 3. Taped to the bracelet was a Polaroid photograph. Diego in a wheelchair. His right leg ended in a stump, wrapped in bandages. His eyes stared directly into the camera. Behind him stood Victor Reyes, one hand on his nephew's shoulder. On the back of the photo, handwritten in careful Spanish, "You took my future. I will take your life." Signed VR. James burned the package in the bathroom sink, but he could not burn the message. Victor Reyes had found him. It was only a matter of time before the hunters arrived. He bought the Idaho property the next day. 40 acres on the edge of Blackwood County, a 1920s farmhouse that was more rot than wood, a massive sagging barn that looked like the next strong wind would collapse it. Dense pine forest on 3 sides. County Road 9 winding through the mountains like a snake. The real estate listing called it a rustic opportunity. James called it a defensible position. He arrived on November 4th. The sky was the color of gunmetal. The temperature was dropping fast. Winter was coming early to northern Idaho that year. The locals were already talking about it. A polar vortex, record snowfall, the kind of winter that killed the unprepared. James pulled his battered F-250 up the gravel driveway. The house looked even worse in person. Windows were cracked. The porch sagged. The barn behind it leaned at an angle that defied physics. An old man was leaning against a fence post watching him. The man wore a faded Carhartt jacket and a cap that said Blackwood Feed and Seed. His face was weathered like old leather. His eyes were sharp. "You the new owner?" the old man asked. James nodded. "Property mine." "Paid for," James said, keeping his answers short. The old man studied him for a long moment. "You got that look, son. Seen it in the mirror?" "What branch?" James hesitated. "Then Marines, Scout Sniper." The old man's face softened. "Green Beret, 69 to 74. Name's Henry Clark." He extended a weathered hand. James shook it. The grip was still strong. "James Brennan." "Welcome to the neighborhood, Brennan. Not much of one. I'm 2 miles down the road. Only other house for 5 miles. Henry nodded toward the barn. "That roof's got a sway to it. One heavy snow and she'll come down on your head." "I'll keep that in mind." Henry pulled a business card from his pocket. Handwritten phone number. "Radio's on channel 7 if you need anything. Winter gets mean out here, and I mean kill you dead mean." He paused. Previous owner was Cold War paranoid. Built all sorts of crazy things nobody knows about. "You find anything interesting, you let me know." James watched Henry drive away in an old Ford pickup. The man moved like a soldier. Even at 65, the training was still there. Economy of motion. Situational awareness. The way his eyes scanned the tree line before he climbed into his truck. Brothers in arms recognized each other. Even decades later. The first week was a blur of frantic preparation. James ignored the farmhouse. Let it rot. His focus was on the perimeter. He walked every inch of the 40 acres, noted sight lines, identified cover positions, marked potential ambush points. He installed motion sensor floodlights around the property, reinforced the door jambs with 3-inch screws, bought an AR-15 rifle, a Mossberg shotgun, and enough ammunition to fight a small war. He set up a shooting range behind the barn to zero his weapons. Every night he ran through tactical scenarios. If they come from the road, if they come through the forest, if they breach the farmhouse, what are my fallback positions? Where are my weapons caches? How do I create a kill zone? But the fear never left. Every car on County Road 9 was a potential threat. Every sound in the night was a footstep. The nightmares intensified. Diego's screaming mixed with the crying of the 12 kids. James would wake at 3 in the morning, hand on his pistol, heart hammering. He was a soldier without a war, a man who had been trained to fight but was now trying to hide. The contradiction was tearing him apart. On November 10th, everything changed. James was in the barn scavenging lumber to reinforce the farmhouse windows. The barn was cavernous, old hay bales, rusted farm equipment, a massive oak workbench in the back corner that looked like it had been there since Roosevelt's administration. He was prying up a rotted floorboard when his crowbar slipped. It hit something that rang like a bell, not dirt, metal. James knelt, cleared away 50 years of accumulated straw and mouse droppings. Underneath was a steel hatch, industrial gray paint, heavy-duty hinges, a latch that had been rusted shut for decades. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he went to his truck and got the WD-40 and a sledgehammer. 3 hours later, the latch finally gave way with a shriek that sent crows exploding from the rafters. James shined his flashlight into the darkness below. Concrete steps descended into the earth. The air that rose from the opening was cool and stale, but surprisingly dry. James pulled his Glock and descended carefully. The bunker was 12 feet by 12 feet. Concrete walls reinforced with steel I-beams. A 7-foot ceiling. In one corner sat a rusted metal cot. Shelves lined one wall empty, except for a faded civil defense manual from 1962. James picked up the manual. In the event of nuclear attack, remain underground for a minimum of 14 days. Fallout will render surface conditions lethal. He stood in the center of the concrete room. Above him, the wind howled through cracks in the barn siding. But down here, there was only silence. For the first time in months, James felt his heart rate slow. The farmhouse was a trap. Any tactical analysis showed that. Single story, multiple windows, no second exit. If the cartel hit the house, he would be cornered, outgunned, dead. But this concrete box buried under 6 feet of earth, this was different. This was a fighting position. James's mind raced through possibilities. The bunker could be improved. Air filtration, water storage, food supplies, surveillance equipment, and most importantly, concealment. If he could hide the entrance, make it invisible, then he would have the ultimate tactical advantage. A hidden strong point, a place to observe from, a trap for anyone who came hunting. Over the next 2 weeks, James worked like a man possessed. He ran electrical lines from the barn's breaker box, burying the conduit 6 inches deep and camouflaging it with leaves. He installed a space heater, LED lights, and battery backup systems. He hauled in cases of MREs, military rations that lasted forever and tasted like cardboard, but kept you alive. 20 gallons of water in jerry cans, a chemical toilet, a medical trauma kit with quick clot and tourniquets and morphine. He cleared the old ventilation shaft, a PVC pipe that ran from the bunker up through the earth and emerged 50 yards behind the barn, hidden in brush. He installed a battery-powered fan and a CBR N-rated air filter. And then came the masterpiece, the false floor. James built a heavy oak workbench directly above the steel hatch. 500 pounds of solid wood and cast iron, but underneath, hidden from view, he installed industrial casters, heavy-duty wheels on a greased track. The mechanism was simple but brilliant, a hidden pin lock under the bench edge. When engaged, the bench was immovable, bolted solid to the floor. When released, it slid 3 feet to the left on near-silent bearings, revealing the hatch below. He spent days distressing the wood, rubbing in dirt and oil, shattering rust and old nails, making it look like the bench had been there for 40 years. To any observer, it was just another piece of forgotten farm equipment. He installed baby monitors in the farmhouse, one in the kitchen, one in the bedroom. The receiver went into the bunker. From his concrete box, he could hear everything that happened in the house above. Trail cameras went up in the trees, motion activated, solar powered, covering the driveway and the forest approaches. James could monitor them from his phone. By December 2nd, the transformation was complete. James Brennan had turned a forgotten Cold War relic into a modern tactical bunker. Everything he needed to survive, everything he needed to fight. That afternoon, he drove into town for supplies. The hardware store in Blackwood was small, aisles of tools and lumber and propane tanks. James was loading a cart when he felt eyes on him. He turned slowly. A young Hispanic man stood by the magazine rack. Mid-20s, thin build, tattoos visible under his jacket sleeve. The kind of tattoos that marked cartel affiliation. The man's eyes met James's for just a moment. Then he turned and walked quickly toward the exit. James followed at a distance. Watched the man climb into a white pickup truck. Watched him drive away. The license plate was Mexican. When James returned to his own truck, he found something tucked under the windshield wiper. A cigarette pack. Mexican brand. Faros. Inside the pack was a photograph, James and Juarez, taken through a rifle scope, crosshairs centered on his head. The hunters had arrived. That night, James reviewed the trail camera footage. The same white pickup had been on his property 3 times in the past week. Circling, studying, taking notes. He enhanced one image, zoomed in on the driver's face. Recognition hit him like a fist. Diego Reyes, in the driver's seat, a wheelchair folded in the back. The boy he had crippled in Juarez had come to Idaho. Not for revenge. Diego did not look like a fighter anymore. He looked like a scout, a spotter, gathering intelligence for someone else, for Victor. James spent the next 24 hours intercepting communications. He had kept one DEA contact, a signals intelligence specialist who owed him a favor. Through encrypted channels, they hacked into Diego's phone. The WhatsApp messages were in Spanish, but the meaning was clear. Victor Reyes, storm hits Thursday night. Perfect cover. We go in Friday, 4 p.m. Ghost will be trapped. Diego Reyes, uncle, this is crazy. The blizzard will kill us too. Victor, we have 4x4, supplies, GPS. He has nothing. You want revenge for your leg. This is it. Diego, after a long pause. Yes, uncle, for my leg. A third voice entered the conversation. Carlos Mendez, former Mexican Special Forces, GAF trained, 15 confirmed kills. Now Victor's personal enforcer. Carlos, I will handle Ghost. You just drive. James read the messages twice. Then he began loading his go bag. Extra ammunition, trauma kit, encrypted phones, cold weather gear in case he needed to evacuate. He walked through the farmhouse one last time, left lights on timers to create an illusion of occupancy, placed the AR-15 in the bedroom closet, unloaded, bait. At 10 p.m. on December 4th, he crossed the frozen yard to the barn. His breath misted in the frigid air. The temperature was already dropping below zero. He slid the workbench. The mechanism moved smoothly, silently. Years of marine engineering training put to use. He descended into the bunker, pulled the hatch closed above him, threw 3 heavy deadbolts. The concrete walls closed around him like a tomb, or like a fortress, depending on how you looked at it. James sat on the military cot. His M1911 pistol lay on the blanket beside him. The baby monitor crackled with the sounds of the empty house, wind rattling windows, the furnace clicking on and off. Above, the first snowflakes began to fall. The storm was coming, a historic blizzard that would bury northern Idaho under 4 feet of snow and drop temperatures to 40 below zero. And behind the storm, 3 men were coming. Victor Reyes, driven by grief and rage. Diego Reyes, crippled and angry. Carlos Mendez, a professional killer who had never failed. They were coming to hunt a man called Ghost. But they did not know that the Ghost had stopped running. They did not know about the bunker, about the preparation, about the trap that had been set. They did not know that winter was not their ally. It was his. James Brennan chambered around in his M1911, clicked off the safety, and waited in the darkness. The hunters had arrived, but in the frozen wasteland of Blackwood County, it was no longer clear who was hunting whom. The power went out at 4:15 p.m. One moment the farmhouse hummed with electric life, the next silence. The kind of silence that pressed against eardrums, the kind that made men reach for weapons. In the bunker, 6 feet below the barn floor, James Brennan sat in darkness. His thumb found the switch on the battery lantern. Soft LED light filled the concrete box. The baby monitor beside him crackled with static, then cleared. Heavy boots on hardwood. The sound came through the speaker like thunder. Then a voice, smooth, almost gentle. Almost the kind of voice that made promises it never intended to keep. Ghost, I know you are here. Your truck sits outside. The hood is cold, yes, but you did not walk into a blizzard. So where are you hiding, my friend? Victor Reyes had arrived. James's hand moved to the M1911 on his lap. His finger rested along the frame, not on the trigger. Not yet. Marines were taught trigger discipline before they were taught to shoot. A weapon was only as dangerous as the man holding it. Control was everything. A second voice came through the monitor, deeper, rougher, a voice that had shouted orders across battlefields. Boss, the road is gone. We don't handle this quick. We are stuck here too. Carlos Mendez, the professional, the one James would have to kill first. Victor's laugh was cold. We are not leaving until I am done. James closed his eyes and listened. In the darkness of the bunker, his other senses sharpened. He had learned this in Afghanistan. When you could not see the enemy, you learned to hear them, to smell them, to feel their presence through changes in air pressure and the subtle vibrations of their footsteps. The baby monitor became his window into the world above. Glass shattered. That was the china cabinet in the hallway. James had seen it on his first day. Cheap wood and cheaper dishes left by the previous owner. Fabric tore. The couch in the living room gutted like a fish. They were looking for hidden weapons, money, anything that might tell them where their target had gone. Kitchen is clear, Carlos said. His voice was professional, methodical. This was not his first hunt. Check under the sink. Americans hide in stupid places. Victor's accent was thick. His English was good but not native. Each word carried the weight of Sinaloa of desert and blood and cartel justice. Drawers yanked open. Silverware clattered to the floor. Cabinets slammed. Bedroom, Victor commanded. Footsteps moved through the house. James tracked them mentally. Front door to hallway, hallway to bedroom. The layout was simple. He had memorized every room, every window, every possible entry and exit point. The mattress hit the floor with a thump. Clothes hangers scraped across a closet rod. AR-15 here. Carlos's voice was sharp, alert. No ammunition. A pause. James could almost see Victor thinking, processing. A weapon without ammunition was bait, or a sign of desperation. He is here, Victor said. No Marine leaves his weapons behind. James allowed himself a thin smile. They were looking for a man hiding in closets and crawl spaces. They were thinking like hunters tracking wounded prey. They were not thinking about a man who had spent 2 weeks building a fortress. The destruction continued. 30 minutes of systematic violence. The couch became stuffing and splinters. The kitchen table was overturned. Even the pictures on the walls were torn down and examined for hidden safes or compartments. Through it all, James sat motionless. His breathing was slow, controlled. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 4, out through the mouth for 4. The technique had been drilled into him in sniper school. In combat, panic killed faster than bullets. Diego, Victor's voice crackled through the radio. Report. A younger voice answered, nervous, uncertain. Back door is secure, Uncle. No tracks in the snow. Diego, the nephew, the boy James had crippled in Juarez, out there in the freezing darkness, standing guard on a prosthetic leg, while his uncle searched for revenge. He did not walk into the storm, Victor said. Keep watching. The baby monitor went quiet for 10 minutes. James checked his watch. 4:50 p.m. Outside, the blizzard was intensifying. The weather service had predicted whiteout conditions by 6, 4 feet of snow. Wind chills approaching 50 below zero. Nature was about to become the most dangerous player on the battlefield. The barn, Victor's voice cut through the silence. James's jaw tightened. What about it? Carlos asked. It is the only other structure. Maybe he hides in the hayloft, like a rat. Too obvious, Carlos said, but his tone was uncertain. But we clear it anyway. James heard the farmhouse door open and close. Heard it again. 2 men exiting, moving toward the barn. He was 50 yards away from them. 50 yards and 6 feet of earth in a steel hatch in a false floor. Might as well have been a mile. Might as well have been on the moon. But they were coming to him, step by step, exactly as he had planned. The barn door screamed on its rusted track. The sound vibrated through the wooden frame down through the support beams into the concrete walls of the bunker. James felt it in his chest like a bass drum. Heavy boots on wooden planks. 2 sets, moving carefully. Tactical spacing. These were not amateurs stumbling in the dark. Flashlights, Victor ordered. Thin slivers of light appeared through cracks in the floorboards above James's head. The beams swept back and forth. Methodical. Professional. James reached over and switched off his lantern. The bunker plunged into absolute darkness. He did not need light, he needed to be invisible. A ghost in truth as well as name. Old tractor, workbench, junk. Carlos was doing a tactical assessment. Floor is packed dirt except that raised platform in the back corner. What platform? Victor asked. James's hand found the grip of his pistol. His thumb rested on the safety. Still off, still ready. Wooden frame, different construction than the rest. Carlos's boots moved across the floor. Each step was directly above the bunker. Dust rained down from the ceiling. James held his breath. Not from fear, from training. Shallow breathing made noise. In close quarters, noise was death. The footsteps stopped. Someone was standing on the false floor. Standing on the workbench platform, 3 feet above the steel hatch, 3 feet above James's head. These boards are newer, Carlos said. His voice was muffled by the wood but still clear. Different wood. Someone worked here recently. Victor's breath hissed. Rip them up. James's finger moved to the trigger. Then the world exploded. A truck horn blared from the direction of the farmhouse. Not a tap. A sustained, continuous blast. Honk, 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 on, shattering the frozen silence. Diego, Victor shouted into his radio. What is happening? Someone is at the truck. Someone is. A rifle shot cracked across the property. High-powered, single shot. The sound of a bolt-action weapon in the hands of someone who knew how to use it. Diego's scream came through the radio. Panicked. Terrified. They shot me, God, they shot me. Contact. Carlos's voice was pure combat instinct. Move. The boots above James's head ran hard. The barn door crashed open. Footsteps pounded away into the snow. James exhaled slowly. His heart was hammering, but his hands were steady. Training overrode adrenaline, always. He pulled out his phone. The screen glow was harsh in the darkness. He opened the trail camera app. The cellular backup was still working despite the storm. The image was grainy, but clear enough. A man in winter camouflage, bolt-action rifle, kneeling behind the woodpile 200 yards from the farmhouse. The rifle was aimed not at people, but at the truck. Henry Clark, the old Green Beret, had come to war. James watched through the camera as the scene unfolded. Victor and Carlos burst from the barn, weapons raised. Diego was on the ground by the truck, clutching his leg. No, not his leg, the prosthetic. Henry had shot the truck's front tire, and Diego had thought the bullet was meant for him. Where is the shooter? Victor screamed. Carlos scanned the tree line. His movements were controlled, professional. 200 meters, 2 o'clock, tree line. Wild pistol fire erupted. Victor and Diego shooting blindly into the forest, wasting ammunition, panic shooting. Carlos did not fire. He was smarter than that. Handguns were useless at 200 yards. He was looking for cover, for a tactical position, for a way to get his people out of the kill zone. Another rifle shot. This one punched through the truck's hood. Engine coolant sprayed into the air, instantly freezing in the Arctic cold. He's military, Carlos said. His voice was tight. That's precision shooting. We need to fall back. To where? Victor demanded. The barn, only structure with cover. They retreated, dragging Diego with them. The young man was crying, not from pain, but from fear. The kind of fear that came when you realized you were in a fight you could not win. James listened to them crash back into the barn, listened to them barricade the door with hay bales, listened to Victor screaming at Diego to stop crying. His radio crackled. He had almost forgotten about it. Channel 7, Henry's channel. Brennan, Henry's voice was barely a whisper. You reading click twice if yes. James picked up the handheld radio, pressed the transmit button twice. Click, click. Figured you had a hidey hole. I got thermal scope. Saw 3 heat signatures in the barn. You safe, James whispered into the radio. Underground, barn floor. They are on top of me. A long pause. Jesus, you got air. For now, can you get to the house, use the landline, call the sheriff? Lines are down, cell towers out. Storm knocked out everything. We are on our own till morning plow. Henry, you need to pull back. You are outnumbered. The old man's chuckle was dry. Son, I am 65. Been waiting 40 years for one more good fight. I will keep them busy. You do what Marines do best. What is that? Improvise, adapt, overcome. Semper Fi, kid. The radio went silent. Above James's head, the cartel was regrouping. He could hear them moving equipment, shoving hay bales against the walls, building a defensive position. Then came the sound that changed everything. An engine roaring to life. The truck. We stay here, Carlos said. Barn gives cover. The old man cannot approach through open snow. We wait. What about Ghost? Victor asked. If he is in the farmhouse, he cannot get to us either. Stalemate. We wait for the storm to pin down the shooter. Then we hunt. The truck engine grew louder, closer. They were driving it into the barn. James looked up at the ceiling, at the wooden planks and the false floor and the workbench that hid the hatch. The truck weighed 3 tons, maybe more with a full tank and equipment. The false floor was built for 500 pounds. The workbench, tools, not a vehicle. The math was simple and terrifying. If that truck parked above the bunker, the floor would collapse. The hatch would be exposed, or worse, crushed, trapping James below with no way out. He grabbed the duct tape, moved fast, started sealing every seam around the hatch. Not to hide, to survive. Because if that truck idled above him, the exhaust would seep down. Carbon monoxide. Odorless, tasteless, deadly. The barn door exploded inward. Wood splintered. The truck forced its way through tires, churning engines screaming. The entire structure shook. Dust poured from the ceiling like rain. James covered his head as the vehicle rolled overhead. The floorboards creaked, groaned, bent but did not break. The truck stopped. The engine idled, a low rumble that vibrated through the concrete walls. Close the door, Carlos ordered. Block it with hay bales, keep the heat in. Run the engine every 30 minutes, Victor said, for warmth, save gas. James finished taping the hatch seams. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from the first traces of carbon monoxide. He could smell it. Smell. Faint but present, acrid, poisonous. He retreated to the far corner of the bunker, pulled his shirt over his nose and mouth. The duct tape would hold. Probably. The earth would filter most of the exhaust. Probably. Probably was not a word that Marines like to use. The temperature began to drop. James could see his breath even inside the bunker. The earth provided insulation, but it was not perfect. Outside, the thermometer was plunging toward -20, the kind of cold that killed exposed skin in minutes, that froze lungs, that stopped hearts. Above him, the cartel was learning the same lesson. I cannot feel my fingers, Diego whimpered. Move around, Victor snapped. Generate heat. We need fire, Carlos said. His voice was still controlled, but James could hear the edge creeping in. Burn scrap wood. Smoke will give our position away. We already are pinned down. Need heat or we die. They built a fire. James smelled it immediately. Wood smoke seeping through the floorboards, mixing with the truck exhaust. His concrete tomb was filling with poison gas from 2 sources. He grabbed more tape, stuffed his torn shirt into cracks, sealed everything he could reach. The smoke smell faded but did not disappear. His lighter test showed the truth. He flicked the Zippo. The flame was small, orange instead of blue. High carbon dioxide. The air was going bad. Midnight came and went. James drifted in and out. Not sleep, more like a trance, his body conserving oxygen, his mind tracking sounds from above. The cartel was falling apart. Why did you not bring winter gear? Victor's voice was slurred, hypothermia affecting his speech. You said quick in and out, Carlos shot back. This was supposed to be easy. Do not talk to me like that. I am Victor Reyes. You work for me. Then lead us out of this frozen hell, a scuffle, bodies hitting the truck, Diego groaning in the background. James listened, analyzed. 3 men trapped in a barn, freezing, running out of gas, turning on each other. The cold was doing his work for him but it was killing him too, slowly. The oxygen level was dropping, his headache was worse. His fingers were numb, not from cold, from CO2 poisoning. He had maybe 6 hours before he lost consciousness, maybe less. At 12:30 a.m., Diego stopped talking. The young man had been crying, praying, calling for his mother. Then silence. Diego, Victor's voice cracked. Wake up. He is alive but fading. Carlos's voice was flat, clinical. Core temperature too low, he needs a hospital. We cannot get to a hospital. Then he dies. Simple. You heartless bastard. I am realistic. We have two choices. Save Diego and all die, or leave him and maybe survive. Victor made a sound, half sob, half scream. This is Ghost's fault. All of it. He shot Diego. He took his leg, and now he is taking his life. The barn went quiet. James could hear Victor crying. Could hear Diego's shallow breathing. Could hear Carlos checking the truck's gas gauge. Then Victor started shooting. The gunshots were deafening even through 6 feet of earth. Bang, 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 bang. Bullets punching through the floorboards. Splinters exploding. Rounds embedding in concrete. James rolled off the cot. Pressed himself against the wall. A bullet hit the floor 2 inches from where his head had been. Another shattered his water jug. Stop, Carlos shouted. You will kill us all. Ghost, Victor screamed. I know you are here. Come out and fight me, you coward. More shots. Random. Wilt. Victor had lost his mind. The magazine ran dry. Click, click, click. The sound of an empty weapon. Carlos tackled Victor. They wrestled on the barn floor. Diego was unconscious in the corner. The truck was almost out of gum. The fire was dying. The temperature was lethal. And below them, James Brennan made his decision. He flicked his lighter one more time. The flame was almost invisible. Barely enough oxygen to sustain combustion. In another hour, maybe 2, he would pass out. In 3, he would be dead. He could die in this hole like a rat, or he could die fighting like a Marine. He picked up the M1911, checked the magazine, 8 rounds, plus 1 in the chamber. 9 chances to end this. He holstered the pistol and grabbed the Mossberg shotgun. 12 gauge, 9 shells, 18 weapons, enough to fight a small war. His hand found the workbench release lever. The mechanism he had built with such care. The trap he had set 2 weeks ago. The hunters were above him, freezing, desperate, divided, exactly where he wanted them. James Brennan took 3 deep breaths, the last good oxygen in the bunker. His mind was clear. His hands were steady. The training overrode everything else. He gripped the lever. Above him, Victor Reyes was still ranting, still shooting into the floor with an empty gun, still screaming for Ghost to show himself. Under here, Victor was saying. He is under here. I will dig him out, burn him out, smoke him like a rat. Carlos tried to stop him. Jefe, you have lost your mind. Under the floor, Victor repeated. Under the floor. His hands found the edge of the workbench, started searching for a way to move it. His fingers traced the hidden pin mechanism. Here, Victor said. There is something here. A pin, a lock. James did not wait for him to figure it out. He yanked the lever. The workbench shot left on its greased track with a sound like a cannon firing, steel bearings on rails. 500 pounds of oak moving at speed. The hidden cavity opened like a mouth, like a grave, like a doorway to hell. Victor Reyes stumbled backward. His eyes went wide. He was staring into a black hole that had appeared beneath his feet. A hole that should not exist. A hole that meant his prey had been watching him, listening to him, waiting for him. And from that hole, James Brennan rose. Weapons on the ground, James said. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the frozen air like a blade. Hands up, now. Victor Reyes stared. His brain was trying to process what his eyes were seeing. A hole in the floor. A man rising from that hole. A man who had been beneath them the entire time. You were under us. Victor's laugh was unhinged, hysterical. The whole time like a rat, hiding like a rat. Drop the gun, Reyes. Victor raised his pistol. His hands shook vehemently. Hypothermia and rage fighting for control of his muscles. You shot my nephew. Took his leg, his future. James kept the shotgun trained on Victor's chest. At this range, the spread would be tight. 12-gauge buckshot would punch a hole the size of a fist through a man's torso. He was trafficking kids, American teenagers. I would do it again. Carlos Mendez was on his knees 3 feet to Victor's left. Blood crusted on his temple from where Victor had pistol whipped him earlier. But his eyes were clear, alert, calculating. The AK-47 lay on the barn floor between them. 5 feet from Carlos, 7 feet from James. Carlos was GAFE trained, Mexican Special Forces. He had been in situations like this before, outgunned, cornered, and he had survived by being faster and more ruthless than his enemies. James saw Carlos looking at the rifle, saw the micro-expressions, the tension in the shoulders, the shift in weight, all the tells that came before violent action. "Touch that rifle," James said, not shifting the shotgun from Victor, "and I paint the wall with you." Carlos froze. His eyes met James's. A moment of recognition passed between them. Two professionals, two warriors, different sides of the same coin. In another life, they might have been brothers. "So what now, Ghost?" Victor's voice was steadier now, the shock wearing off, the criminal mind reasserting itself. "You shoot me, Carlos kills you. We all die. Or you drop weapons and walk away. Live." Victor's laugh was bitter. "After you crippled Diego, after I drove through hell to find you, no. One of us dies tonight." Carlos moved, lightning fast. Years of training compressed into a single explosive motion. His hand darted toward the AK-47. His body rolled left, creating distance, finding cover. James fired. The shotgun boom was deafening in the enclosed space. But Carlos was already gone. The buckshot tore into the wooden floor where he had been a half-second earlier. Splinters exploded upward like shrapnel. Carlos came up with the rifle, barrel swinging toward James. James pumped the shotgun. The spent shell ejected. A fresh round chambered. The sound was distinctive, final. The sound that meant someone was about to die. He dove behind the overturned workbench as Carlos opened fire. The AK-47 was designed for volume, for suppression, for putting so many rounds downrange that accuracy became irrelevant. Carlos fired in controlled 3-round bursts. Professional, tactical, bullets punched through the oak bench. Wood chips exploded. One round grazed James's shoulder. Hot pain, blood spreading across his shirt. Not serious, not yet. Victor joined the fight. Wild pistol shots, no aim, no control, just panic and rage made manifest in burning powder and flying lead. James blind fired over the bench. Boom! The shotgun bucked in his hands. He did not hit anyone, but it forced them to cover. "Jefe," Carlos shouted. "Flank left, I will suppress." They were coordinating, moving with tactical precision despite the cold and fear and exhaustion. Victor went left around the bunker opening. Carlos kept firing short bursts, trying to pin James down while Victor got an angle. James was trapped. The bunker entrance was behind him. No retreat. The barn walls were in front. No escape. And 2 armed men were maneuvering to kill him. Then Henry Clark saved his life. The rifle shot came from outside. High-powered, precise. The round punched through the barn's east wall like the wall was made of paper. It missed Carlos by inches, close enough to make him dive flat. Henry's voice crackled over the radio. "Brennan East Wall, 3 o'clock, move now." James did not think. He ran, straight toward the hole Henry had shot in the wall. Victor fired behind him, missed. Carlos rolled up, raising the AK, another shot from Henry. This one hit Carlos's rifle. Metal shrieked. The AK shattered. Carlos dropped it with a curse clutching his hands. James hit the wall at full speed, shoulder first. The rotted boards gave way. He crashed through into the snow, landed hard. His wounded shoulder screamed. He rolled behind the woodpile. Cover inside the barn, Victor was screaming. "He is outside, get him." "My rifle is gone," Carlos shouted back. "You get him." But neither man wanted to go into the killing field. Not with Henry Clark somewhere in the darkness, with a precision rifle. Not with a blizzard howling and visibility measured in feet. James crouched behind the woodpile. The cold hit him like a physical blow. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. No coat, no gloves. The wind chill was 50 below. Exposed skin would freeze in minutes. His shoulder was bleeding. Not arterial. The cold was actually helping, slowing the blood flow. But hypothermia was now a bigger threat than bullets. He needed to end this. Fast. The truck's headlights still cut through the snow, twin cones of light illuminating the white void. James could see the barn, could see shadows moving inside, could see Victor emerging from the door, pistol raised. Victor was following the blood trail. drops of red on pristine white, a path leading straight to James. James raised the shotgun, lined up the shot, center mass, 40 feet. Easy. His finger moved to the trigger. Victor found Diego. The young man was lying in the snow where they had dragged him during Henry's first attack. His prosthetic leg was bent at an unnatural angle. His lips were blue. His chest was not moving. Victor dropped to his knees, gathered his nephew's body in his arms. The pistol fell forgotten in the snow. "No," Victor whispered, then louder. "No, Diego, wake up." But Diego Reyes was beyond waking. Hypothermia had claimed him during the firefight. The cold was impartial. It did not care about revenge or justice or the love between uncle and nephew. It simply took. Victor looked up. His face was wet with tears that were already freezing. "Ghost," he screamed into the storm. "You killed him. You killed them all." James stepped out from behind the woodpile, shotgun at low ready. "I did not kill Diego. Winter did, just like it is going to kill you." Victor spun, fumbled for his pistol. His hands were too numb. The gun slipped from his grip, disappeared into the snow. He scrabbled for it, but could not find it. James advanced. Slow, steady. The shotgun never wavered. "It is over, Reyes." Victor sank back onto his knees beside Diego's body. "Then shoot, end it. I have nothing left." James's finger was on the trigger. 3 pounds of pressure. That was all. 3 pounds and Victor Reyes would cease to exist. The man who had hunted him, who had driven 3 men into a frozen hell for revenge. The man who was now a broken, weeping figure cradling his dead nephew. James hesitated. In Juarez, the choice had been clear. Armed men, kidnap children, shoot or watch innocents die. But this was different. This was execution. The moment of hesitation saved James's life. Carlos Mendez came from the blind side. No rifle, no pistol, just a knife and decades of close-quarters combat training. He hit James like a linebacker. Both men crashed into the snow. The shotgun flew from James's hands, spun away into the darkness. They rolled, grappling, each trying to gain the dominant position. Carlos was stronger, better trained, but James had something Carlos did not. Marine Corps martial arts program, designed not for sport, but for killing. Fast, dirty, brutal. Carlos got on top, raised the knife. "You should have stayed in your hole." James caught his wrist, held the blade inches from his throat. His arms shook with the effort. Carlos had leverage, gravity, time. The knife descended, inch by inch. James released the wrist. Carlos lunged forward off balance from the sudden lack of resistance. James twisted, used Carlos's momentum against him. His other hand found the K-bar on his own belt. One motion. Train. Practice 10,000 times. The blade went under Carlos's ribs, angled up, seeking the heart. Carlos's eyes went wide. Blood appeared on his lips. He tried to speak, but only red bubbles came out. "Bien hecho," he finally managed. "Well done." Then he collapsed onto James, dead weight in every sense. James shoved the body off, rolled to his feet, staggered. His vision swam. Blood loss, oxygen deprivation, hypothermia. His body was shutting down. He found the shotgun in the snow, picked it up, turned. Victor was still on his knees, watching. No weapon, no fight left in him. "So that is it," Victor said. His voice was empty. "You win." "I did not want any of this." James's teeth were chattering. "You came for me. You shot Diego. I saved 12 kids. Diego was trafficking them. He made his choice. He was 24, a kid himself. Old enough to pull a trigger, old enough to face consequences." Henry Clark emerged from the tree line, rifle slung over his shoulder. He looked at the scene. Carlos dead, Victor disarmed, James barely standing. "Brennan, you all right?" "Define all right." Henry allowed himself a small smile, then his face hardened. He looked at Victor. "2 armed Americans. You are unarmed. This is not murder. This is justice." "We are not killers, Henry," James said. Henry's expression was unreadable. "Speak for yourself. I got 40 VC notches. One more would not trouble my sleep." James shook his head, looked at Victor. "You have 2 choices. Walk back to your truck, try to drive out, freeze to death in a ditch, or come inside, wait for the sheriff, face trial. Trial for what? Victor's laugh was hollow. You shot my nephew first, in Mexico. Justified combat, protecting civilians. You will face attempted murder on U.S. soil, trafficking, conspiracy, life in prison. Prison is death for a cartel boss. Victor looked at Diego's body, at Carlos's corpse, at the frozen wasteland around them. I would rather freeze. He stood, staggered toward the truck. His movements were slow, uncoordinated. Hypothermia had progressed too far, but he kept walking. Let him go, Henry asked. Winter will judge him. Victor reached the truck, climbed into the driver's seat. The engine was still running but sputtering. Nearly out of gas, he tried to shift into gear. The truck lurched forward 6 inches. Then the tires spun uselessly in 4 feet of snow. He was not going anywhere. James and Henry returned to the farmhouse. Henry got a fire going while James collapsed on the couch. The warmth was painful. Blood flow returning to frozen extremities felt like needles under the skin. Henry bandaged James's shoulder. Through and through, you will live. Diego will not. Carlos will not. They came to kill you. You defended yourself. That is war. I am tired of war. Henry looked at him for a long moment. We all are son, but war does not care what we want. They monitored the emergency radio. Around 2 a.m. the storm began to break. By 6 the plows were moving. By 8 the sheriff's department rolled up the driveway in 4 vehicles. Deputy Higgins was first through the door. His hand rested on his holster when he saw James. Mr. Brennan, want to explain the war zone outside? James told the truth. All of it. Juarez, the trafficking, Victor's threats, the attack, the self-defense. Henry corroborated every detail. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. They moved to the sheriff's office in town. The room smelled of stale coffee and institutional disinfect. James sat across from Deputy Higgins and a DEA agent who had flown in from Boise. Walk me through it one more time, Higgins said. His pen hovered over a yellow legal pad. From the moment they entered your property. James did, step by step. The baby monitor, the audio surveillance, the truck in the barn, the oxygen crisis, the emergence, the fight. The DEA agent leaned forward. His name was Morrison, early 40s, crew cut, the kind of man who had never questioned an order in his life. You're telling me you spent 18 hours in an underground bunker while 3 armed men searched for you? That's correct. And you killed 2 of them. Carlos Mendez attacked me with a knife. I defended myself. Morrison wrote something. You could have called us when you knew they were coming. Phone lines were down. Storm knocked out the cell towers. You saw the weather report. Still, you set a trap. I prepared to defend my home. That's not illegal in Idaho. Higgins held up a hand. Let's look at the evidence. Henry Clark corroborates your story. The trail cameras caught everything. Victor Reyes arriving, the break-in, the baby monitor recording is clear. Victor's phone has messages planning the attack. Morrison's jaw tightened. This is the same James Brennan from the Juarez incident, the contractor we terminated for disobeying orders. The same James Brennan who saved 12 American kids from a trafficking ring, Higgins corrected. I read the file. Those kids are alive because of him. He created an international incident. He saved lives. That's what matters in my county. They found Victor in the truck cab at noon, alive but barely, severe frostbite on all extremities, 4 fingers, 3 toes, both ears. The paramedics rushed him to Kootenai Health in Coeur d'Alene. Carlos's body was exactly where he fell. The knife wound told its story. The medical examiner ruled it self-defense within an hour. Diego was already gone. The coroner ruled hypothermia, contributing factor underlying trauma from previous gunshot wound to the leg. Time of death approximately midnight. He had died while Victor and Carlos were arguing, while James was sealed in his bunker, while winter tightened its grip on Blackwood County. The evidence was overwhelming. Bullet casings from multiple weapons, spent shells from the AK-47 Victor's pistol, James's shotgun. The barn floor was destroyed, bullet holes everywhere. The workbench mechanism documented in photographs. The bunker inventoried. Trail camera footage showed the entire timeline. Victor's truck arriving, Diego scouting the perimeter, the break-in, Henry's intervention, everything. The baby monitor in the bunker had recorded 18 hours of audio. Victor's threats, Carlos's tactical communications, Diego's fear, their descent into hypothermia and madness. All of it preserved on a digital recorder. Victor Reyes' phone was the final nail. WhatsApp messages planning the attack, GPS data showing his route from Spokane to Blackwood County, photos of James's property taken during reconnaissance. A voice memo Victor had recorded. Tonight we kill Ghost, for Diego, for family, for honor. The district attorney reviewed everything, took 3 months. In the end, the decision was unanimous. No charges against James Brennan, justifiable homicide, castle doctrine, stand your ground. Every legal protection that existed for a man defending his home. Victor Reyes was a different story. He survived the frostbite, barely. The doctors amputated 4 fingers on his right hand, 3 toes on his left foot. Both ears were removed. His nose required reconstructive surgery. When he looked in the mirror, he saw a monster, a ruined man who had sacrificed everything for revenge and gained nothing. He was extradited to Mexico in March 2019. The Mexican authorities charged him with murder, trafficking, conspiracy, kidnapping. The list went on for 3 pages. The Sinaloa cartel disowned him publicly. A spokesman gave a statement to the press. Victor Reyes does not represent our organization. His actions in the United States were unauthorized and reckless. We condemn violence and respect international law. It was a lie, everyone knew it. But it was a useful lie. The cartel cut Victor loose to protect themselves. He became a ghost, erased from their history. They placed him in Federal Social Readaptation Center, No. 1 Altiplano. Maximum security, 23-hour lockdown. 1 hour in the yard. The prison that held El Chapo before his escape. Victor lasted 2 years. On a Tuesday morning in April 2021 during his yard time, 3 inmates approached him. They were from the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Rivals, enemies, men who saw opportunity in a disgraced former boss. The guards found him 20 minutes later, 11 stab wounds. The handmade shiv was still embedded in his kidney. They had taken their time, made it hurt, made it last. He died in the prison hospital 3 hours later. The nurse on duty reported his last words. Diego, I am sorry, I am sorry. No family claimed the body. His wife had divorced him in prison. His remaining relatives wanted nothing to do with the name Reyes. The cartel that had once feared him now forgot him. Victor Reyes was buried in an unmarked grave in a potter's field outside Mexico City. No headstone, no mourners, no legacy. Just another criminal who chose revenge over reason, who destroyed himself chasing a ghost. The irony was not lost on anyone. He had come to Idaho to kill a man called Ghost. Instead, Ghost had lived, and Victor had become the ghost. Forgotten, erased, as if he had never existed at all. James spent the winter recovering. Physical wounds healed fast. The shoulder was just a scar by March, a puckered reminder on his left shoulder blade where the bullet had entered and exited. Henry joked it matched the shrapnel scar on the other side. Symmetry. But the mental wounds ran deeper. He saw Diego's frozen face every time he closed his eyes. The young man's lips were blue. His eyes were open but unseeing, snow accumulating on his eyelashes. A 24-year-old who had made wrong choices and paid the ultimate price. He heard Carlos's last words. Bien hecho. Well done. The professional respect of one warrior to another, even in death. Even as enemies, Carlos had recognized the truth. That in combat, the better prepared man wins, and James had been better prepared. He watched Victor weep, over and over in an endless loop, a man broken by grief and cold, and the realization that his revenge had accomplished nothing. Diego was still dead, Carlos was still dead, and Ghost still lived. The VA connected him with a therapist in February, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She had served 2 tours in Iraq with the Army. She understood the weight. The office was in a low building near the VAA hospital in Coeur d'Alene. Beige walls, comfortable chairs, a beak of tissues on the table between them. James sat with his hands folded, staring at the floor. "Tell me about the knife," she said in their third session. James was quiet for a long time. "Kabar, 7-inch blade. I have carried it since boot camp." "That is not what I meant." He knew. He looked up, met her eyes. It went in clean, under the ribs, angled up, textbook. I felt it hit his heart, felt him stop. "And how do you feel about that?" "He was trying to kill me." "That is not what I asked." James rubbed his face. "I feel like I should feel worse than I do. Carlos was a soldier, GAF trained. He knew the risks. He made his choice, but Diego," his voice cracked. "Diego was 24. He was just his uncle's driver, a kid in over his head." "You did not kill Diego." "I shot him in Juarez, took his leg. That set everything in motion." "You saved 12 children in Juarez. Diego was participating in trafficking those children. He was armed. He was a threat. He was 24. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward. "James, you are not responsible for the choices other people make. Diego chose to come to your property with his uncle, chose to participate in an attack. Those were his choices. Does not make him any less dead. No, it does not. But it makes you a survivor, not a murderer. There is a difference." And they met twice a week for 3 months. James talked about Juarez, about the 12 kids, about the girl with braids who had asked if he was real, about Diego's scream as the bullet hit, about the firefight, the extraction, the termination. He talked about Portland, the paranoia, the nightmares, the constant checking over his shoulder. He talked about Idaho, the bunker, the preparation, the 18 hours underground, the moment he rose through the floor, the look on Victor's face. He talked about Carlos, the knife fight, the blade entering flesh, the moment of death. He talked about Victor, the hesitation, the choice to let him walk away, the knowledge that Winter would judge him. Dr. Mitchell listened, asked questions, never judged. She understood something that few people could, that sometimes killing was necessary, that sometimes the moral choice was to pull the trigger, and that living with that choice was the burden warriors carried. "You have PTSD," she said in session 10. "That is not a diagnosis, it is a fact. Combat changes the brain, changes how we process threat, how we sleep, how we relate to the world. I know, but you are not broken. You are adapting. The bunker was adaptation. The preparation was adaptation. You took a threat seriously and you prepared for it. That is healthy. I killed 2 men, and you stopped 2 men who came to kill you. Intent matters, context matters. You saved your own life and possibly Henry's. That is not murder. That is survival." James looked at her. "When do the nightmares stop?" "They do not. Not completely, but they change. You learn to carry them. You learn that survival is not clean. It is not heroic. It is ugly and hard, and it costs something. But it is still survival, and that is worth something." By April, James was teaching survival courses for veterans. The VA had a program helping soldiers transition back to civilian life. James was a natural fit. The first class was 6 veterans: Afghanistan, Iraq. 1 Vietnam-era Marine who had heard about James through Henry. They gathered in the barn. James had cleaned it up, repaired the walls, filled the bullet holes with wood putty, but the scars were still visible. Battle damage. "This barn saved my life," James began, "not because it was defensible, because underneath it I had a position nobody knew about." He walked to the workbench, placed his hand on it. The mechanism was still there, still functional, a reminder. "How many of you feel safe right now, in your homes, in your heads?" No hands went up. Neither did I. After Juarez, after the DIA fired me, I spent 3 months looking over my shoulder. Every shadow was a threat. Every sound was a footstep. I was living in constant fear. He pressed the hidden release. The workbench slid left. The hatch revealed. The concrete steps descending into darkness. One of the vets, a young woman with a prosthetic arm, whistled. "You lived down there for 18 hours while 3 cartel hitmen searched for me." Another vet, older Iraq veteran with burn scars, and they never found it. They stood on top of it, but they did not see it, because I spent 2 weeks making it invisible. James descended into the bunker. The vets followed. They stood in the concrete box looking around, touching the walls, imagining. Preparation saved my life, James said. Not luck, not firepower. Preparation. Every hour I spent building this was an hour invested in my survival. The young woman touched the concrete wall. Did you kill them? Two of them. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Waiting. Does it get easier? She asked quietly. The nightmares. James looked at her. Really looked. Saw the haunted eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the way she held her prosthetic arm close to her body. Protecting. No, he said honestly. It does not get easier. But you learn to carry it. You learn that survival is not clean. It is not heroic. It costs something. But it is still survival. And you are still here. That matters. What did it cost you? My peace, but I kept my life. And I found a new purpose. He gestured to the group. This, teaching you, helping you prepare. So when the wolf comes to your door, you are ready. The Iraq vet nodded slowly. When does the wolf come? He is always coming. The only question is when, and whether you will be ready. They spent 4 hours in that bunker. James taught them about threat assessment, about preparation, about the mindset of survival. He taught them that PTSD was not weakness. It was the price of survival, the brain's way of staying vigilant, staying alive. He taught them that killing in combat was not murder, that defending your life was not a sin, that the guilt was natural, but the guilt did not make them bad people. It made them human. One vet asked the question James had been asking himself for months. Did you ever hesitate when you had to kill? James thought about Carlos rolling toward the rifle, about the split-second decision, about how hesitation could mean death, about how he had hesitated with Victor, about the choice to let him walk away. Every time, he finally said, and I should. The day I do not hesitate is the day I become them. The day killing becomes easy is the day I lose my humanity. The class met every week for 3 months. Word spread. More veterans came. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Men and women who had seen combat, who carried the weight, who needed to know they were not alone. James taught them survival skills. But more than that, he taught them community, brotherhood, the knowledge that other people understood, that they were not crazy, not broken, just changed. Henry visited often. They worked on the property together, repaired the barn, cleared brush, maintained the perimeter. Henry became a co-instructor, teaching his own survival skills, sharing his own stories. Vietnam, the firefights, the losses, the decades of carrying the weight. One afternoon in May, they sat on the farmhouse porch, drinking coffee, watching the sunset turn the mountains gold. You did good, kid, Henry said. I killed 2 men. You survived. That is what counts. James was quiet. Then, do you ever think about Vietnam, about the men you killed? Every day. Does it get easier? No, but it gets more bearable. You learn that war is not black and white, that sometimes good men have to do terrible things, that the cost of survival is high, but the alternative is worse. What is the alternative? Death, or becoming the thing you are fighting against. Henry looked at him. You are not Victor Reyes. You did not hunt. You did not attack. You defended. There is a difference. Tell that to Diego. Diego made his choices. He came to your property. He helped plan the attack. He was not innocent. He was 24. And you were trying to survive. Stop carrying his choices. You have enough weight. In late May, a letter arrived. No return address. Tucson postmark. Inside was a photograph. 12 teenagers, older now, college age, smiling, standing together in front of a banner that read, Survivors Unite. On the back, handwritten, We survived. Thank you, SM. Sarah Martinez, the girl with braids from Juarez. James stared at the photo for a long time. Then his phone rang. Mr. Brennan, a young woman's voice, nervous. My name is Sarah. You probably do not remember me. I remember. A long pause. We wanted you to know, all 12 of us, we are okay. We are in college. We are getting therapy. We are living, really living. That is good to hear. The DEA never told us what happened to you. We had to search. Find out you had been attacked. That Victor Reyes came for you because you saved us. He came because he chose revenge. Because of us. Because you saved us. No, James said firmly. Victor came because he could not accept consequences. That is not on you. Never on you. I saw the news about Diego, about Carlos. You had to kill them. I did. Does it haunt you? James looked out the window, at the barn, at the property he had defended, at the life he had built. Every day, but I would do it again. All of it. Juarez, Idaho, everything. Because 12 kids are alive. He heard her crying softly. Berto, listen to me. You are alive. You are thriving. You are in college. You have a future. That is what matters. That is what it was all for. Thank you, she whispered. Not just for saving us, for surviving, for showing us that we can survive too. After the call ended, James put the photo on his refrigerator. 12 faces, 12 futures, 12 reasons. The cost had been high. 2 men dead by his hand. Diego dead from hypothermia and bad choices. Victor destroyed and eventually killed. Nightmares, PTSD, guilt that would never completely fade. But 12 kids were alive. 12 futures existed that would not have existed. 12 families were whole. The math worked. December 2019, 1 year after the siege. The first snow of a new winter began to fall on Blackwood County. James stood in the barn watching through the open door. The flakes were large and accumulating slowly, beautiful and deadly. He walked to the workbench, placed his hand on the wood, felt the hidden mechanism beneath. Still smooth, still silent, still ready. Henry joined him, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in hand. Thinking about that night, always. They stood in silence watching snow accumulate outside. The property was peaceful. No threats, no hunters, just winter, returning as it always did. You know what I learned, James said finally. What is that? That you cannot outrun your past, but you can prepare for your future. Every day I spent building this bunker, I was choosing life, choosing to fight, even when part of me wanted to hide. Henry nodded. That is the difference between you and Victor. He spent his time planning revenge. You spent your time preparing to survive. 3 men died because of that difference. 3 men died because they chose to attack. You chose to defend. There is no moral equivalence. James looked at the barn walls. The bullet holes were filled, but still visible if you knew where to look. Battle scars, reminders. I kept 12 kids alive in Juarez, he said quietly. Lost 2 men here in Idaho. Lost Diego to hypothermia. Lost Victor to his own choices. The math says I am ahead, but it does not feel like winning. That is because you are human. Warriors who lose their conscience become monsters. You kept yours. That Ayla is the victory. They walked back to the farmhouse, inside warm light and hot food and the radio playing low. Henry was staying for dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, simple food, good food. Later, after Henry had driven home, James descended into the bunker one last time. He did this sometimes. Sat on the car, looked at the concrete walls, remembered. He thought about Victor's frozen rage, about Carlos's professional calm even in death, about Diego's youth wasted, about 12 teenagers who were alive because James had disobeyed orders in a compound in Juarez. He thought about the cost, the weight, the responsibility that came with training and weapons and the willingness to use both. He thought about the future, the veterans he was teaching, the lives he was helping rebuild, the purpose he had found in the ashes of that terrible December night. Later he climbed out, slid the workbench closed. The mechanism moved smooth and silent, a testament to preparation, to discipline, to the refusal to be a victim. He locked the barn. The farmhouse glowed with warm light. His truck was parked in the driveway. The property was secure. The perimeter was checked. Everything in order. The radio played softly. A weather report. Another winter storm warning. Heavy snow expected. Temperatures dropping. The announcer warned people to stay inside, to prepare, to be ready. James smiled faintly. Let it snow. He had learned the lesson that winter taught, that preparation beats luck, that discipline beats chaos, that a man who refuses to be a victim can never truly be broken. Winter had come to Blackwood County in 2018. It had tested 3 men who came for revenge and 1 man who stood his ground. 3 men had fallen, 1 had walked away. Not because he was stronger, not because he was better, but because when the storm came, he was ready. The bunker under his barn was not just a hole in the ground. It was a testament to survival, to will, to the unbreakable spirit of a man who had built his fortress not from concrete and steel, but from discipline and preparation and the absolute refusal to surrender. Victor Reyes had come hunting a ghost. Instead, he found a Marine who had spent 2 weeks preparing for war. The winter had not killed James Brennan. It had revealed him, stripped away everything except the core truth. That survival was a choice. That preparation was the difference between life and death. That sometimes the only way to have peace was to be ready for war. And when the next storm arrived, as storms always did, James Brennan would be ready again. Because that was what it meant to survive. Not to win, not to conquer, just to be standing when the snow finally melted. To carry the weight, to teach others, to turn trauma into purpose. The bunker remained, hidden beneath the barn floor, a secret fortress, a reminder, ready for whatever came next. And James Brennan, the man they called Ghost, stood watch over Blackwood County as winter returned. Not because he was lucky, because he was ready.